I'm Molly, a 16-year-old high school student, and I experience menstruation. While I can confidently say this, according to the recent report conducted by charity Share the Dignity, over 40% of participants said that they felt embarrassed talking about periods. But why does society feel embarrassed about periods? It's because there's something called period stigma. Period stigma has been around for as long as people have been menstruating, but only became a significant issue with the rise of religions and culture. Women were originally believed to be capable of spoiling crops, cursing livestock, and bringing bad luck to anyone who would dare come close enough. However, with a number of scientific advancements, society came to realise that periods are a normal, biological process. Yet, period stigma still exists. The reason it still exists is because of the severe lack of an inclusive menstrual education and normalised conversation. The lack of education surrounding periods breeds ignorance in our society, reinforcing the idea that periods aren't something to be spoken about, leading to misconceptions and myths to form, worsening the stigma. No student should be deprived of an education about a topic that, according to the United Nations Children Fund, affects 1.8 billion people globally. But change starts with us, the students. Follow me on my journey to create an educational program aimed to increase knowledge and reduce the stigma surrounding menstruation amongst Australian high school students. As my educational program is aimed at high school students, I thought it was really important to get their opinion. I began my journey by interviewing 10 Year 11 students, 5 that experience menstruation and 5 that don't, as my program is directed towards all students, not just menstruators. I chose to interview Year 11s as they most recently completed their mandatory health education in high school, and here's what they had to say about it. Do you menstruate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
No.
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 No. I don't think I do, no.
What is your understanding of what a period is?
A period is when
After or during puberty.
a girl bleeds through her vagina every month.
The egg travel from... Oh, I don't even know what they call it. Like,
Or when the egg and the sperm have not met.
And the uterus lining comes down, I guess.
Their lining it sheds.
there's like a blood build-up and it gushes out.
And they experience pain, and it's like not great.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, honestly.
Reflecting on your previous answers, do you feel as though your high school education has provided you with enough knowledge and understanding of the process of menstruation?
Not really.
Probably not.
Oh, not really.
No?
Not at all, actually.
Not really.
I feel like I don't think I've ever been told about the process very much in high school.
To be honest, I already knew most of it before I even came into high school.
I was told, and I kind of now forgot.
What do you think could be done to reduce the stigma around menstruation and prevent society from feeling embarrassed talking about periods?
We could probably learn a lot more about it in school.
The educational system, they should talk more about it.
Talk more about it at school.
Talk about more in health.
I guess maybe more in-depth learning about it.
I suppose like more education in schools and just in society in general.
Talk about it more at home, in high school, obviously in health classes, not lunch talk.
Yeah.
I think maturity, really, you just gotta be mature.
If you learn about periods and like what to do, they split up the girls and the boys.
Yeah.
I think the boys should sit in and listen to what it is, because even though it doesn't affect them, it educates them like what to do, what it is.
They should actually combine both genders, no matter who you are.
I believe there isn't enough education
Yes.
in this school, in this country, in this world.
Before beginning to create my program, I had to consider specifically who my program would be best aimed at. I created a survey for health teachers at my school, asking for some advice in this area due to their knowledge about teaching similar topics. The results from this survey concluded that on average, they believe that Year 7s would benefit most from this program, as it is important to educate students from a young age to stop the stigma at the earliest stages possible. Year 7 is also a good year to implement this program, as according to Kids Health and other medical organisations, the average age to begin a period is 12 years old, which is also the average age of students in Year 7. The health teachers also believe that educating smaller groups of students would make the teaching feel more personalised, make students feel more comfortable, and would engage all students more effectively. To verify this suggestion, I researched similar sources such as a website published by Kid Power, which discussed similar advice. I wanted the first slide of my presentation to be straight to the point, so I decided to leave it plain with only the word menstruation on it. I was influenced to do this by some advice which I received from the survey which I sent out to health teachers, which suggested that the teachers at my school find it really beneficial to be blunt and straight to the point when speaking about a sensitive topic. Having the single word of menstruation also shows students that menstruation is just a word and nothing to be ashamed about. The second slide of my presentation portrays a disclaimer asking students not to take any of this information as medical advice, as I am not a doctor and therefore not qualified to provide medical advice. This said, throughout the slides I have made sure to highlight that if a student is concerned about their health, it is really important that they do seek guidance from a doctor. To make my presentation more comprehensible, I decided to break it up into 5 main sections, each indicated by a bright red title page. I based the different sections around similar topics that were discussed in some period guides that I researched, such as Shina Say's Quick Guide to the Menstrual Cycle and Periods. I looked at these period guides as they were directed at the same age group which I am targeting, so I was able to assure that the information was age appropriate. The first section of my PowerPoint covers the process of menstruation. In my interviews with students, this was the area that the students were most uncertain about, depicting the lack of education around this process. The explanation of this process will begin with a diagram of a uterus and a discussion about the different parts, as well as an explanation around some basic knowledge about periods, such as the average age for starting menstruation. The next section of my documentary is linked to the previous section and explains the menstrual cycle. This is important for students to understand as it highlights why menstruation occurs and what the uterus actually goes through to prepare itself for pregnancy, as this allows students to see that menstruation isn't shameful or dirty and is actually quite an amazing process. The next section of my presentation covers common period symptoms. Period symptoms were another one of the grey areas that I identified during my student interviews. This section of the presentation is beneficial for all students. It allows those who experience menstruation to gain knowledge about the common period symptoms, which may make them feel more knowledgeable and therefore may decrease feelings of embarrassment. For those who don't menstruate, this section is beneficial as it reiterates that period symptoms aren't a myth or a joke and that these are real and normal symptoms experienced by the body. I've included this slide as an important reminder to students about the normality of period symptoms. So many of the common misconceptions and myths associated with periods relate to period symptoms. Some examples which I found in an article by Healthline being that period pain isn't that bad, and that people assume that if a girl is angry, she must be on that time of the month. Directly addressing that these symptoms are normal reinforces the idea in students that periods can vary from menstruator to menstruator and that society should be accepting of every person's period experience as they are all normal. On this slide, I have also included another reminder to seek help from a medical professional if concerned, because while most period symptoms are normal, on occasion there are sometimes ones that can indicate something more serious. No one should have to feel like they need to deal with uncomfortable symptoms, so this slide is used to reassure students that it is okay to seek medical help if you are struggling. I felt that it was important to include at least a few brief slides about PMS, as according to the Office on Women's Health, around 90% of menstruators experience at least one symptom of PMS, making it a significant part of menstruation and therefore something worth discussing. 1 in 4 menstruators experience severe pelvic pain, according to the Pelvic Pain Foundation Australia, which is why it is so important to educate students about this, so that those students who do experience severe pelvic pain are able to understand what is happening to their body and what they can do to ease their symptoms. This section is also important for the non-menstruators, as so many young women are dismissed about their period pain due to the lack of education for young boys. Explaining to them what happens to the uterus when cramps occur and the severity of how this pain can get will help them to understand that the pain women are going through isn't something that we are just making up and can actually be really difficult to endure. Not all period pain requires medical attention, and a lot of period pain can be soothed by at-home remedies. This slide provides a variety of simple treatments for period pain, one of which is gentle exercise. To get all students involved during the slide, students could be encouraged to try some exercises as a group. This will allow students to get up and move due to the presentation requiring quite a lot of listening. When looking at 10 steps for teaching sensitive topics to students published by Kid Power, I found that to keep students engaged, it was really important to include a different activity about halfway through your talk. This activity is not only beneficial for students who menstruate, but it also allows the students who don't menstruate to feel involved and provides them with knowledge to help their peers who do menstruate if they are struggling with period cramps. It also makes the presentation feel a bit more fun and interactive, which assists in taking the edge off the talk, relaxing the environment, which may ease feelings of awkwardness or embarrassment. Throughout my program, I've tried not to mention too many diseases related to periods, as the information around this is quite confronting and very medical related, and I'm trying to make sure that I am in no way influencing students with information that could be taken as medical advice or cause them distress. However, I did feel as though it was important to briefly mention endometriosis. Endometriosis is a disease which the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare says affects 1 in 9 menstruators and occurs when the endometrium, the inner lining of the uterus, begins to grow in areas outside of the uterus, which causes heavy bleeding and intense menstrual pain. According to the website Jean Hales, endometriosis currently takes on average 7 years to be diagnosed, which is significantly too long for someone to suffer without help. Educating students on the common symptoms of endometriosis may be one of the solutions to cutting down this diagnosis time, as it will allow students to be aware of the symptoms so that they can identify endometriosis at an earlier stage. The next section of my presentation highlights the different period products available for menstruators to use. This section is beneficial to those who menstruate, as it's good for them to know about the different period product options available, especially as according to a news article published by ABC News, this is not something commonly discussed in society. And as for non-menstruators, teaching them about the different period products will help to reduce the shame and need for privacy that menstruators feel around period products. This section of my PowerPoint is one of the most important because it is going to really focus on how students can act on period stigma themselves. Directly tackling the different behaviours which are directly linked to the worsening of period stigma will allow students to see how the current actions and behaviours of our society are contributing to the stigma. The importance of this slide is to help students understand the origins of where the stigma around menstruation has actually come from. The origins of period stigmas are actually quite ridiculous, and explaining these bizarre origins for students helps them to understand that there really is no reason for there to be a stigma, and the reason it existed in the first place was really just because of some ridiculous myths. The final part of my presentation is where I share some simple things that high school students can do to stop this stigma. Even just changing small things like not using euphemisms for periods or being inclusive with the language used when discussing periods can make a really big difference in the way that society views menstruation and can remove some of the embarrassment and secrecy around the topic. Providing students with some options to make active change may inspire them to take part in reducing the stigma and may encourage more students to stand up and make a difference to end period stigma, which I learned through the article by Kids Power previously mentioned about teaching sensitive topics to students. The final slide of my presentation is just a reiteration of the previous slides to reinforce the important message that I am trying to share through my educational program. Periods aren't something to be ashamed about, and the only way to stop period stigma is to stop the secrecy. So start the conversation today. The major cause of the stigma around menstruation in our society is the severe lack of an education around periods. The lack of education is manifesting myths and causing society to view menstruation as disgusting and shameful. As our society becomes more inclusive and accepting, it is about time that the stigma around menstruation is diminished. Through the creation of my program and the careful considerations of all of the details throughout my presentation to make it inclusive, educational and empowering, I think I have successfully created an example of a period education program tailored to the needs of Australian high school students that will effectively decrease the stigma and increase knowledge around menstruation. I hope that my presentation will inspire educators and parents of students to consider the lack of period education in Australia so that our society can begin to take more steps towards a period-proud future.